and that's a service we pay for, but it's, I think within the next year or two, you're going to see some innovation.
I texted Katie in the hospital. She said she's on.
Big problem we have is that multimedia channels. No clue how to operate those. And, you know, even the small ones, it's like, you know, all the things that, it's just amazing.
What did you see?
I know you told me about this.
So it's one ear and out the other.
Your text message said you didn't read it yet, so I thought I'd call you because, you know, better early than late. You're welcome.
So is it just, it's going to
Would
take
you like to meet us verbally later?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does he have details of all?
He'll probably have some additional details
Cool,
on
thank you.
outside of what
Okay,
happened with the rest of this.
You're all
Did you
set.
send a picture of the
I don't think we sent a picture, we probably get one though. He's on the
You just texted me there.
like sex
You didn't shoot it. He has reader seats.
It's awesome. It's Lisa this year. It's supposed to be. Those are my assistant.
he is pretty full staff right now, or
No, we're way down. Haven't replaced Logan yet. Trevor.
So Katie says she starts to.
Who else? Trevor's gone. We have a producer still.
Jimmy check it down, see if he started part two.
Still, we're now down a editor. Got to work. We've got a lot of stuff.
gosh, that's tough.
Yeah. And, you know, trying to find anybody.
It's awesome.
It's, you know,
Even here at the county, like entry level positions.
Yeah. It's tough.
We're having to interview people who have terrible misspellings and grammatical errors on their application.
Yes, I know.
Resume, but they're the best of the bunch.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you proof that and wanting a job?
You gotta have somebody in your life. You know. if
Can't have your
can't-
sister there all the
Yeah,
time.
you gotta- Somebody. Phone a friend. Hey, how are you all?
Sure.
Hey, how are you?
Good to see you again.
Good to see you as always.
Thank you. How was your holidays?
It was great. How about yourself?
Good. Had a great
How are
time.
you? That was good.
No complaints.
Not to be left out. I gotta shoot these guys in. How are you? Good. Any last minute things? Phil?
Think so?
Drop my voice recorder.
Yeah, by all means.
What do you want?
Cool. Wow. That's fine. Chief will stand up here.
I didn't know.
Want to hand that to Bunny? Or too? You all ready? Great. Well, thanks for coming today. Appreciate it. As you know, we had a critical incident take place in Owyhee County yesterday afternoon, approximately 3:30 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This took place. Basically, a little bit of back story from what you've got on your press release. On Friday, the female resident of this household petitioned the court in Owyhee County for a civil protection order. On Monday, yesterday, the 3rd of January, that order was filed and then sent to the Sheriff's Office for service. 2 deputies of the Owyhee County Sheriff's Office responded to that household, that residence, and where they provided the paperwork to Mr. Castro that a civil protection order had been filed and was being served on him, and that he must leave the residence. Obviously, in these types of cases, law enforcement does give the individual time to gather their belongings, make some arrangements before they leave the residence. This particular civil protection order, of course, that is part of a move-out order. He's not allowed to stay there. And so in the course of serving this civil protection order, unfortunately, Mr. Castro grabbed a weapon and threatened both the deputies. The deputies ordered Mr. Castro to drop the weapon on multiple occasions. Mr. Castro failed to do so, and the deputies both at a certain point fired their weapons at Mr. Castro, and Mr. Castro received mortal gunshot wounds in the incident. The two deputies have been placed on paid administrative leave, which is normal and standard procedure in these types of incidents. Sheriff Grant contacted my office and along with our other critical incident task force offices and advised them that there had been a officer involved shooting in Owyhee County, and so all of our critical incident task force partners responded to the call, and due to our rotation, the Canyon County Sheriff's Office was next in line, and so we will be leading the investigation into this incident. The sheriff had reported to me following the incident and as early as today that his office had responded to this residence on multiple occasions for disturbance over the recent weeks, upwards to 6 or 7 times. So this is a residence that was familiar to the deputies and to the sheriff, and of course, as what a civil protection order is to keep the peace and try to bring safety to the occupants of the residence and make sure that things are done according to the law and according to the order that was issued by the judge. Right now, Mr. Castro, of course, was, as I said, received mortal wounds. He died at the scene. Next of kin, of course, was notified immediately, and that process is ongoing. We, as a critical incident task force, would like to share our condolences, of course, to Mr. Castro and his family, and the witness at this residence. And this is not a result that we'd like to see happen, that we don't want to see this happen. Unfortunately, it did happen. And now our job is to take our time and thoroughly examine the facts, treat this as what it is, as a criminal investigation. The two deputies, as I said, have been placed on administrative leave pending the appropriate time frame. And we will then finish our reports, finish our investigation, and then the process requires that we, as the lead on this investigation, we will then turn our findings over to the prosecuting attorney in Owyhee County for their review. The prosecuting attorney is not here today. I cannot speak for him, nor would I. That prosecuting attorney may then conflict the case out or may take it under advisement with his own office, but that will be the process. These cases do take time, as you all know, and so we won't have an immediate, any type of immediate announcement, but I can assure you that the partners in the Critical Incident Task Force out here in the Canyon County area will do everything we can to make sure things are done appropriately, efficiently, and in the interest of justice. So with that, that's about as much information that I can give you. I'll be glad to take any questions that I can answer. Some questions I may not be able to answer just because of the sensitivity and confidentiality of the case. And we do want to protect the integrity and confidentiality of the case for all parties involved, Mr. Castro and the deputies and all the families. So with that, I would stand for any questions you may have.
Sheriff Donahue, we've
Yes.
heard that Mr. Castro has been linked to a previous cold case in Idaho. Are you able to comment on that at all or know anything about that?
I was made aware of that this morning, quite frankly, and I did read an article pertaining to that. That's really the extent of my knowledge. It'll be interesting to see what takes place next. I know that the sheriff mentioned it again to me as well this morning. So as you can imagine, his office is somewhat inundated with things going on right now. But prior to today, I did not have knowledge of that case.
So, but it is safe to say that that is the same Castro that is connected in that case, has been mentioned?
That is safe to say, because that is correct.
And then in terms of, you mentioned it was a female resident who petitioned the court. What is the relation to Castro?
Husband and wife.
Thank you. Can you also specify what weapon was used?
Well, we don't normally specify. We'll let the investigation play out its course. And so, again, we want to protect all parties in this. A weapon was displayed, and the individual did charge at the deputies. Obviously, they took action that they felt appropriate at the time. Yes, ma'am.
That was my question.
Okay, great. Yes, sir.
What's the timeline as far as releasing information on the officers?
That typically is up to the officer, the sheriff or the chief of police, and so I would expect within a week those names will be released. Typically, in these types of instances, we found that through obviously case studies, we give the officers roughly 48 hours before they're actually interviewed by the investigative team, based on scientific knowledge. That's the best for the officers for retention and accuracy of what took place, and so we'll give them that time, and then Lieutenant Gentry, who's leading the task force, will help get those interviews done. It will be up to the sheriff when he feels comfortable releasing those names.
And a follow-up.
Sure.
I was listening to it on the scanner last night. I actually work at Owyhee, and I heard that they cleared the scene, and the two deputies that cleared the scene, it sounded like one of them was actually there when it started. Is that normal? They were there at the start?
Well, I wasn't there,
Right.
but what we try to do is sequester the deputies as quickly as possible. Obviously, the first and foremost, they need to secure the scene, right? So, again, you're talking about limited manpower in urban, or rural Owyhee County, and so if one of the officers was still on scene, I would believe that it was more from a secure standpoint, make sure other officers got to the scene so he could be relieved, and then back to the sheriff's office. When I talked to the sheriff fairly quickly after this incident took place, both officers and the female resident were at the sheriff's office, sequestered to be interviewed by the investigative CITF team. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to disclose the name of his wife?
Not at this time. No, it's a great question. Again, we just try to keep as much perimeters as we can to protect those involved, and obviously everyone is going through a hard time, and we want to respect that. And at the same time, do what we have to do, which is a very difficult task for the task force team to get into the information and do the interviews and so on and so forth. But yeah. Yes, sir.
To your knowledge, were the two deputies the only two that were on the scene to start the moment?
That's correct. They were the only two on scene. Yep.
You mentioned that, this particular home has been responded to for disturbance calls 6 or 7 times in the past, and then we did talk about that cold case. Did Mr. Castro have any other previous criminal history that you're aware of?
Only what I've read in the article this morning. That's my understanding that he did have a conviction for a sex case and was a registered sex offender in our state, and had done some time on parole. So that's the extent of my knowledge, but of course you can access that through the repository and get better information or more information. And to be clear on what the sheriff told me this morning was that the occurrences of disturbance had taken place over the last, let's say, he said in the last week or so, so I would expect in the last 7 to 10 days. So unfortunately, this time of year, as we all know, there's so many factors that can influence problems in our homes, right? Relationships and those types of things. And unfortunately, it must have gotten to a point where his wife petitioned the court to resolve some of those issues. So.
Sorry if you mentioned this, but was she there when this all happened? When the protection order was served?
She was at the house, yes.
discussion to have Sheriff Grant here today?
I did ask the sheriff if he could come here. That's well within practice of what we do. The lead agency, of course, does these types of conferences, but the sheriff had pre-scheduled commitments, invoices that he could not make it here at this time frame. So, and quite frankly, he would probably not want to say a lot, because it's his agency, and we would respect that position of his. Yep. I did make the invitation though, and he was. I know what the meeting he's going to, and he was committed. So. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. We appreciate it, and we will get you more information as it becomes available to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.